All right, do we have Watkins connected? Watkins? Watkins, can you hear me? We are not, just so you know, we are not getting any video or audio from you, Watkins. Huntsville, I just unmuted you guys. I see you guys got connected in. Jake, can you hear me? Check 1, 2. Just want to make sure we hear you guys there. Glade Central, are you guys still there and connected? Just want to do a final roll call, kind of. I see you coming. Do you want to, here, I'll unmute you.
We're good.
Okay.
All good.
Okay, perfect. Perfect.
We just made the announcement to set the kids down.
Okay, sounds great.
A day to remember for the rest of your lives. There's a great promise for all of you. The Pro Football Hall of Fame and Extreme Networks present the Heart of a Hall of Famer program. With nearly 100 Hall of Famers participating, we have reached 48 states around this country, sharing the message that football is more than a game and can teach Americans how to huddle up during a time when we need to be united.
It's time for America to take a real deep dive. Not at no one else, but at yourself individually. If you want to change America, don't brush your teeth with your head down. Look at who you are and be the example. Be the example.
An opportunity to meet and learn from one of the greatest football players of all time. But more than that, the chance to see that their Hall of Fame life wasn't given to them. Single-parent homes, drug-infested neighborhoods, and poverty.
I grew up in a neighborhood that was considered one of the worst in America. And the house that I grew up in was one of the worst in that neighborhood. By the time I was 20 years old, I knew at least 30 friends or family members who had lost their lives. Football became like a second parent to me. It taught me the things that my father wasn't there to teach me, and that my mother, as a struggling single-parent woman, just didn't know to teach me.
But they learn how to live a life of character before pursuing their football careers. Today, you will learn you can do the same that they once did. Making good decisions can lead to a prosperous life, both on and off the field. Your game for life has already begun. It's your decision whether or not you want to be a successful student, son, daughter, brother, or sister.
Every one of you can have a Hall of Fame life, whether or not you play football. You can be as good as you want to be. The Hall of Fame is all about integrity, character, and excellence. You have the opportunity to represent yourself that way. You determine the vote.
Welcome to a once-in-a-lifetime program, the Heart of a Hall of Famer.
God, I love football. And to be inducted into the Hall of Fame is probably the one fulfillment of a lifelong dream that you just don't know what it means to me. I remember when I was growing up in Albertville, Alabama, Mom and Dad would take us to church. And as soon as church was over, we'd fly home to try to see guys like Ray Nitschke and Gale Sayers and Dick Butkus and all those guys play. And man, I'd sit there and froth at the mouth and just say, I wonder if I'll ever be good enough to play with those guys. I wonder if I'll ever be able to play with them. And I remember even playing in the NFL, you know, I had a coach, Jim Rango, that had played in the game. And I went to him one time. I said, Coach, you think I could have played with those teams in the 60s? You think I was good enough? Well, what today means to me is that I've made a cut. You know, I'm on the team. And right now I've got the honor of playing alongside with the greatest heroes that ever played football. I also want to believe that this award means that in some small way, I might have given something back to the game that's given me so much.
All right, guys, welcome to Huntsville, Alabama for our latest installment of the Pro Football Hall of Fame, Heart of a Hall of Famer series. My name is Jake Ray, and I'm the Youth and Education Manager at the Pro Football Hall of Fame in Canton, Ohio, and I'm going to be moderating the session today, not only here for the students in Huntsville, Alabama, but for students tuning in Ohio, as well as we have a high school tuning in Florida as well. Our mission at the Pro Football Hall of Fame is to honor the heroes of the game, to preserve its history, to promote its values, and to celebrate excellence everywhere. Those values that we promote and we'll be talking about today are those of commitment, integrity, courage, respect, and excellence. I'm excited. Hopefully you guys are as well, to hear how these values, along with other things Mr. Hanna learned throughout his career, helped him not only become a better football player on the field, but a better brother, better father, better husband off the field. But before we get started, I do have a few people I want to thank. First off, I want to thank our folks at Extreme Networks for all they do for us at the Hall of Fame, as well for all they do for schools across the country. This program would not be possible today without their help and their support. I need to thank our teachers for allowing us to come into their school here in Alabama and to come into those classrooms throughout the country today to teach a little bit about the game of football and how important it is and the values that the game of football can teach. Lastly, though, I need to thank our students. Without the program today, without you guys today, this program is not going to happen or take place. So I want to thank you guys for coming here today, and hopefully you guys learn a little bit about not only Mr. Hanna's career, but the important values of the game of football. So with that, I'd like to welcome Gold Jacket Pro Football Hall of Famer, Mr. John Hanna. So, Mr. Hanna, I want to first off thank you for participating in this program today. I wanted to turn things over to you just with some opening remarks that you have for the students here across the country. No pressure.
I just wanted to say thanks for having me. I don't live a long way from here. I'm living just up on Bentley Mountain, so I didn't have to travel too far. Appreciate y'all having me, and I'm looking forward to hearing your questions. I learned a long time ago, most of the time when I just start talking, most people don't want to hear what I have to say, so it's a lot better just to answer questions. So let me do that instead.
All right, so we'll start off with one here. It's probably going to be a nice popular one.
Let me do this.
All right.
I'll give you a history of that first because you got to understand my era. You guys probably, your dads may remember me. Your grandfathers probably do. But I played at the University of Alabama from 1969 through 72 were my seasons, and got drafted by the New England Patriots in 73 and played there. My last game was actually end of January '86. We got trounced by the Chicago Bears in the Super Bowl. But so that's my era. It was a long time ago. And I'm an old man now, so y'all can take pity on the old man.
So kind of off that, a little bit about your history there. There are two words, especially in this state of Alabama, that everybody seems to know and love, and that would be Roll Tide. Now, I'm an Ohio State fan, so I don't fit in down here. So, yeah, so I had to throw that in there. Go Buckeyes.
Feel sorry for them. They just got trounced by Purdue.
They did. You know what, though? I don't even have any words on to explain that one. Can you talk a little bit more about your experience there at Alabama, especially playing for a legendary coach like Bear Bryant?
Well, I think my experiences at Alabama, a friend of mine asked me, he asked me a question, he said, if you had it to do over again, would you go there? What was it like? And a friend of mine responded to it this way, and I think it's the best response I've ever heard. He said, I wouldn't take $1 million for the experience, but you couldn't pay me $1 million to go through it again. It was a real, Coach Bryant was much more of a dictator type coach. He was totally in charge. I think he did a lot through intimidation. In a lot of ways. Matter of fact, my sophomore year, a week before we played Southern Cal, we had a bunch of young guys, and Coach Bryant wanted to basically check our oil. And so we had a practice that lasted about 3 hours. And during that time, Coach Bryant sent about 10 guys to the hospital with heat stroke and dehydration. And that night, needless to say, a lot of guys packed their cars and went home. And I was going to quit. I had made up my mind to quit. But I also like to eat, so I said, well, I've earned at least one more meal, so I want to eat supper before I go home. And luckily, I fell asleep. And next morning when I woke up, I said, well, I'm here, so might as well stay. And we went in and went to practice. I think we had a 3 o'clock meeting that day. And Coach Bryant comes in, winding his watch. He says, well, boys, y'all learned a valuable lesson. He says, you'll push yourself, and you'll push yourself. You'll think you're going to die, but the human body is an amazing machine. It'll always pass out before it dies. And I guess if you summed up the thing that I got from Alabama was that you can always go further than you think you can. My dad used to tell me that there was an invisible barrier out there, and you push yourself and then you hit that barrier and you'll back off, and you hit it and you'll back off. He said at some time in your life, either anger or fear or something will push you through that invisible barrier. And when you go through that, you'll find out that there's just a whole new world out there that you've never experienced, because you just do more than you ever thought you could. And I think that was the lesson I got from Alabama. I don't ever think I was the best athlete that ever played, but I always felt like when I played, I could be the hardest worker, and I would beat you through work rather than my talent. And that's the way I've tried to approach the game.
Very, very important. So what we're going to do now is we're going to turn over to our students right here in front of us in Huntsville, Alabama. Is there anybody out there who's got a question for Mr. Hanna? Stand up, be brave, right here down. Go ahead. We got a mic right here. Hold up, we got your mic. Go ahead and stand up. State your name.
All right. As a child, what events in your life do you believe helped shape you into the man you are today?
Well, I think that's a good question. I think the football was kind of like everything that was important to me growing up, and I think the story I need to tell you is how I got in football. At that time, my family, we were living in Canton, Georgia. My dad had been a coach, but when my youngest brother came along, he couldn't feed 3 boys that were, and I'm the run of the litter, so he had to quit and find another job. But my mom was still teaching. And one day I went to school, on the playground there were 2, it was on a hill, and there were 2 terraces, an upper terrace and a lower terrace for playground. Well, I was down on the lower field. I think I was in the 4th grade. I was 9 years old. And all my friends stood up on top and serenaded me. And the song went something like this. Fatty, fatty, 2x4, can't get through the kitchen door. And it really embarrassed. I mean, I was, embarrassed. I felt ashamed and all that. So finally, I went home, and Mom got home from school, and I told her what had happened, and she called my dad. And my dad, he didn't call the principal, he didn't call the teachers, he didn't call parents. What he did is he called a kid that he had coached when he was coaching, who was now coaching the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade team. So Dad comes to me and he says, I've got a way, John, that you'll never be called fatty, fatty 2x4 ever again. I said, how's that? He said, well, I called my ex-player who's coaching the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade team, and he said that you could come out for the 6th grade, 6th, 7th, the junior high team as a 4th grader if you wanted to. He said, it's not going to be easy, but if you make that team, I guarantee you'll never be fatty, fatty anymore. So I said, well, let's do it. And I went out, and I not only did I make the team, I was able to start. And so from then on, I football was very important to me in my life because it was a way of being somebody and not being made fun of. And that was the origination, I guess, of how I got into football and why it meant so much to me. Does that answer it?
All right, so for our next question, we're actually going to send it to our school in Florida. So those students there in Florida, go ahead and get your mic unmuted here and go ahead and ask your question for Mr. Hanna.
Is it going to be up here?
Yeah, it should be. They're coming. There he is. Go ahead, guys, quiet. Go ahead and repeat that.
What's the hardest competitor?
The hardest competitor you've ever faced.
Oh, the hardest guy I ever played against?
Yeah.
Was that the question?
Yep.
Well, I got to answer that in a couple of ways, okay? As an offensive lineman, there are guys that I played against that were great pass rushers. The first guy I played against was a guy by the name of Alan Page. Played with the Purple People Eaters with Minnesota Vikings. And he was some kind of something. And he ate my lunch. Also, one of the better pass rushers ever was Randy White. Guy played with the Dallas Cowboys. He was a great pass rusher. There are two guys that stick out in my mind. One was Ernie Holmes, played with Pittsburgh. Ernie was about my height and a little heavier, but he was just real low center of gravity, and it was hard to get under him to push him out of the hole. And the other guy was Refrigerator Perry, because he just weighed 800 pounds. I mean, it's hard to push 800 pounds out of a hole, you know what I mean? It was tough. And but anyway, when I think of all around though, pass and run, I've got two names that always come to my mind that gave me fits. Now that doesn't count linebackers. Linebackers, outside backers, you got Clay Matthews and my mind being up on stage, I nervous, can't think of his name. Don Jackson, and I got fortunate enough to play in front of Dick Book. This is my rookie or second year. He handed my lunch. But defensive tackles, the two all-around guys were Howie Long and Joe Klecko. And I had to play Joe Klecko twice a year. That wasn't fun. But those are the guys that really gave me fits. And I hope that answered that, clear that up.
Did you get any motivation from seeing these guys over and over and over again? And how did you take that to make yourself better? So next time you came up against Howie Long or Alan Page,
every game was a different fight. You know, I mean, it was. You learned each other a little bit more, and so at the initial, like when you repeatedly playing them, they're going to be trying new things on you, and you're going to be trying a few new things on them, and so it's still kind of a play, you know, kind of learning and feeling each other. But eventually, when the game keeps going, you always settle back to what you do best. And so, and it was just a good, those guys just were great ball players, and I hope I didn't embarrass myself in front of them too bad. That was it.
So we'll go ahead and turn over to another student here in Huntsville. Go ahead, raise your hand, ask a question. We'll bring the mic to you. Get another one right down here in the front.
There's another guy right here.
Introduce yourself state your name, and then go ahead and ask Mr. Haney your question.
What are some examples of times that you had to persevere through adversity?
Persevering through adversity.
Well, are you talking about playing with injuries or being tired or that kind of thing? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Yes. Well, at Alabama, we were playing Tennessee my junior year, and we were ahead by enough, and I was feeling really woozy, and Coach, I went to Goose Tree, who was our trainer, and I said, I'd like to sit out the last series. I said, I think I'm about to pass out. So lo and behold, Tennessee scores again, and Goose comes up and says, hey, can you go back in? And I said, sure. So I went back in, and we got the first down so we could hear out the clock. And I'm going to the field, and I remember trying to find the sidelines, and I couldn't. All I hear was Goose Tree going, "Down, Johnny, down." We wouldn't call a timeout. But I finally got the field, got inside, and when I did, I collapsed, and I had 108 temperature. And they were packing me in ice and were throwing intravenous in both arms. That was a scary day. When I came to, I looked up and I saw my brother, and when he did it, he turned red and passed out. I said, "Gosh, I must really be bad shape." So, the other time we were playing, it was in '83. I was with the Patriots, and we had a kind of a funny coach, and I hit that turf, and when I did, I tore my elbow up pretty good, and at halftime, they took my bursa sack out and sewed it up, and I played the second half. And then I developed a staph infection and had to spend a week in the hospital. So they got me out on Saturday morning to go take me to Logan Airport to board the plane. And they sent me my playbook, so I understood what the game plan was. And so I get on the plane, I get off the plane, they put the intravenous in that night. And then the next morning they give me one. We go to the stadium, they throw it in me. At halftime they give me one, and so I played in that game. So, but it was a lot different back then, you know. It was people did things that probably today people would say was pretty stupid. But, you know, it was nothing to play with injuries. And like I said, they took that bursa sack right at halftime and taped it up.
Bring it back in. So all these different moments throughout your career have obviously impacted in different ways, ultimately leading to Canton, Ohio, and being inducted in the class of 1991. And when you're inducted to the Pro Football Hall of Fame, you get three significant items. You get the gold jacket that Mr. Hanna has on. You get the K. George Ring of Excellence that he's wearing as well. And you get probably the most iconic piece, and the piece that everybody knows is that bronze bust that goes on display at the Pro Football Hall of Fame in Canton, Ohio. So right now, live in our Hall of Fame gallery, we have our Vice President, Michael Munoz, who's a Tennessee Volunteer. He's gonna talk a little bit about Mr. Hanna's career and what it means to be a Hall of Famer. So Michael, you there?
We're here in the Hall of Fame gallery, guys, and as you can see, I'm with Mr. Hanna's bust behind me, among others. What you can't see in here is that there are 318 Hall of Fame busts, and those represent the very best of the game of football. Just think of that, guys, 318 busts. To put that into perspective, there have been over 300 million people that have played the game of football at some level. There have been 5 million that have played it at the collegiate level, and over 29,000 have played football, coached football, or administrated it at some level within the NFL at a professional level. So to say that we're standing here with 318 bronze busts, and John Hanna is one of them, is pretty special. So John Hanna a 6'2", 265-pound guard from Alabama, was the first-round pick of the New England Patriots and the fourth player selected in the 1973 National Football League draft. He was an 8-time Letterman star in football, track, and wrestling, and a 2-time All-American at Alabama. In the next 12 years, Hannah became widely recognized as the premier guard of pro football. He was named All-Pro 10 straight years from 1976 through 1985. He won the NFL Players Association Offensive Lineman of the Year award 4 straight years from 1978 through 1981. John finished his career after the 1985 season on a high note. His final campaign had produced an AFC champion and Super Bowl 20 appearance for the Patriots, and All-Pro honors and the Pro Bowl invitation for himself. As you can tell, John Hannah had a career well-deserving of a bust here in Canton. Jake, back to you.
Thank you, Michael. So you've been a Hall of Famer now for 20 plus years. Out of all your memories you've had since you got that gold jacket put on you, what has been the best part about being a member of the Pro Football Hall of Fame?
The best part of being in the Hall of Fame is actually going back to Canton and being able to visit all the guys of your era. Anybody that's played sports knows that there's something special about a locker room. There's a camaraderie there that amongst the guys that you don't have anywhere else. Closest guys I think that can associate with that are military guys who are dependent on each other for their very livelihood. I think athletes, especially if you think of football, and I know I'm getting off the subject, but I want to say it anyway. Football is a very unique sport. If you think of all the other sports, everybody does the same thing, basically. Baseball, everybody catches the ball, everybody throws the ball, everybody, it's the same thing. Soccer, basketball, dribble, shoot. But in football, there's guys that all they do is run the ball. There's guys that block. There's guys that basically are defenders. So you've got all these different body types. You've got all these different personality types. You've got all these different characteristics of people, and you mold them together as a team, and they have to rely on each other to win. And they rely on you, and that creates this unity that just you can't find. And when you go back to Canton every year, you get to experience that locker room camaraderie that you just don't have in the natural world. I tell everybody, the two things I miss most when I had to leave football was the locker room and adrenaline. I love that drug. Adrenaline was a great drug. Man, walking out before a football game all fired up, pumped up. Man, there's nothing like that in the whole world. It's fun. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to turn it back over to our school in Florida. So that our school down there in Florida, go ahead and step up to the microphone, ask your question here for Mr. Hannah.
So, I just want to know, how do you feel?
Repeat that again for us.
I say, how did it feel when you played your first NFL game?
So first NFL game. Welcome to the NFL. What was that like?
Not real good.
There's a story behind this one.
My first game, I weighed in at about 250, my first NFL game, and we were playing a
They needed him instead of us.
Bessemer, Alabama originally. And so I get down and I'm in my stance and I'm having to squat just to look up and find his chest. And he looks at me, he goes, Hannah, I want to teach you to play in the NFL today. I said, oh, Lord. So anyway, we got to going, and it was 3rd and long, and I took my pass set, and I got a little high. Next thing I knew, he had me under both arms, and he's toting me back to the quarterback. If you've ever been an offensive lineman and you feel your toes scraping on the turf, that's not a good feeling, you know what I mean? And I mean, just going up saying, oh, Lord. Finally, he gets back to Plunkett was our quarterback. He threw him to the side and just kills Plunkett. And so he just totally embarrassed me all day long. Anyway, to go forward about 30 years, when I got inducted in the NFL Hall of Fame, he was still alive, and Buck was in the Hall of Fame. And so as I'm being introduced and inducted by my dad before I got up to speak, Buck Buchanan and Dick Butkus were sitting behind me. And Buck looks over at Dick and he says, did you ever play against him? And Dick says, yeah, but he was really young. Buck says, yeah, me too. He sure must have got better since I played him. So that's how my rookie year started. And in actuality, it probably took me I guess it was the end, maybe the beginning of my 3rd year, when I finally, the fear left me and I started playing with some confidence. But it took me at least 2 years. And when the lights sprang, I remember the game, we were playing the Raiders, and I was in front of a guy named Otis Sistrunk, who they called, he said he went to the University of Mars. And Otis was a good ball player, they say. And at the end of the game, I remember going on the bus, and I said, I'm okay. He didn't hurt me. What are you so scared of? And after that game, from then on, I played with a whole different attitude. But it took a long time to get over the fact that these are the guys that I've been watching on television and had been hero worshiping all my life. And I'm out there with it. So it took me a little while. Plus, as an offensive lineman, you know, it takes a little while to learn how to play pro ball, especially when you came out of a wishbone offense going to a post set. It was a totally different experience.
Talk a little bit about your enshrinement speech and your time, not only recently in Canton, but since your induction in 1991. In your speech, you talked a lot about your high school coach and the things he taught you and how important he was. So how important was your high school coach to you and your career even now?
There's no question. I was very fortunate. My dad sent me to a school up in Chattanooga, Tennessee for 3 years in high school. And my high school coach was a guy named Major Luke Worsham. And Major Worsham was from Fairfield, Alabama originally, and fought in World War II in the African campaign. And because of that, he had developed skin cancer. So when he was coaching, he wore this big sombrero. And he was a rough cut guy, now, let me tell you. And the way he would teach us to come off the ball fast as an offensive lineman, he had this big old paddle about yay long, you know. And he'd say go, and when he said go, he'd swing. And if you went off the line and gone, that'd bust you, man. And so I wanted to get off the ball pretty quick, not keep Coach Major Worsham from hitting my rear end with that big old wood paddle. And he was my wrestling coach, and he was also my track coach. But he did these things not meanly. He did it. You know what I'm talking about. I think, guys, there are coaches that work you, and you just say he's a tyrant, right? But there are coaches that work you, and you know that they're working you because they care for you, and they think a lot of you, and they want you to be the best you can be. And there's two different ways that some coaches are just working you because they want to be what's good. But some coaches work you because they want you to be good. Do you understand what I'm saying? And Coach, you knew that Major Worsham truly, I knew that he truly cared for me, that he truly loved me, but he worked the dog out of me. And, but he taught me the basics of the game, and inspired me to be as good as I could be. And he was just a good man, and I love him to death. But
It's cool because you hear we hear all these enshrinement speeches every year, and almost without a doubt, every one of them talks about either a college coach, a high school coach, or even the midget football coach or their youth coaches, and how important they have been. They know them by name. They talk to them even today. So it does go to show that as a high school student, how important coaches are in your life. So with that being said, we'll turn back over here to our students. Here in Huntsville, we got some more hands up. Who we want?
that guy with the red
Over here?
spectacles, yeah.
Right over here.
His hand was up last time.
All right, introduce yourself and then ask Mr. Hanna a question.
My name's Floyd Ronald Blackwood III. Yeah, when you was in high school or whatever, when you was playing football, like around school, was you known as like the jock, like, or was you known as the ladies' man?
So were you a jock or a ladies' man in high school?
Very simply put, I had to tie a pork chop where I'm on that just to get my dog to come lick me. But anyway, I'm going to prove to you real quick that offensive linemen are the smartest guys on the football team. So my dad was a coach, and I got to watch people. And when I decided what I chose to, I started thinking about what position I wanted to play and this and that, the other. So I looked down at the field and I noticed those guys that toted the ball, they'd carry the ball, and all the cheerleaders would be coming after them after the game, and they'd be, all hugging them and all that kind of stuff. And I said, well, that looks pretty good. So let me see what they do. Well, I noticed that every time they got that ball, there was somebody trying to hit them and knock them to the ground and separate them from that football. So I said, I don't want to do that. So then I looked over at this other group of guys, and they were jumping up and down and hollering, and they'd go around hitting folks and knocking them down. They'd jump up, they'd be, doing all this kind of stuff. And I said, well, they seem to be having fun. Let me see what they do. So I watched them, and I noticed that every time that ball snapped, somebody's trying to hit them and knock them out of the way. I said, I don't want that either. So I saw this one group of guys that looked to be real well fed. And they kind of walked up the line of scrimmage, and the ball was snapped. When the ball was snapped, everybody was trying to get around them. And all they were doing was going around trying to hit other folks. And I said, that's the job I want. So that's when I've always wanted to be an offensive lineman.
You like contact as a player?
I do. I think to be a really great football player, you have to be 50% sadistic and 50% masochistic. In other words, what I'm saying is you got to like hitting, but you also got to like getting hit. I know there's a lot of people that like to hit, but that's just half the game. The other half is getting hit. And that's when you really like getting hit and getting up and getting after folks, that's when you become a ball player.
So when you were in high school, you not only played football, but you also wrestled and did track and field in the spring. So how did each of those sports kind of help the others in different ways, and how did they help you eventually become a better football player?
wrestling was probably, of all the sports that I've done, wrestling was probably the best sport for an offensive lineman. Because when you know, if you teach wrestling right, it's not so much about strength as it is leverage and quickness. And you have to feel a guy's weight and use it against him. And as an offensive lineman, it's very similar. You get into a guy and you're into him and you feel his body weight move and you use that, his own movement against him to get him out of the way. And so wrestling just fed right into run blocking on and pass protection as an offensive lineman. It was, I think there was a guy that even played with the New England Patriots after I left that had never played college football, but had wrestled in college and then played in the NFL as an offensive lineman. And it's strictly that. And I did a lot of Greco-Roman when I was, I did a lot of lateral drops, a lot of souffles, a lot of upper body moves in wrestling on takedowns. So that helped me a whole lot with the football.
So for our next question, we're going to send it back to our students there in Belgrade, there in Florida. So if you have another question for Mr. Hanna, go ahead and step up to the mic there and ask Mr. Hanna your question. Sorry, go ahead and say it again.
What she said?
What'd you say again?
What were some of your strengths and weaknesses during your career?
Strengths and weaknesses. What? Strengths and weaknesses during your career. Strengths and weaknesses.
I think one of my strengths was also my biggest weakness. Offensive linemen are typically not aggressive, but I was very aggressive. And it was my strength, but it also caused me, especially on pass protection, I got overly aggressive, and I got beat a little more often than I should on pass protection because of my aggressive style of play. I think to answer your question even better, I think you've got to know your own body. If you heard the guy introduce me, everybody laughed in the sports world when I was picked 4th overall because I was not quite 6'3". I was about 6'2" and 7/8 or something like that. And everybody said, he'll never make it. He's too short. He'll never be a good offensive lineman in the NFL. But what they didn't realize was that my sleeve length is a 37-inch sleeve length, which basically is the same sleeve length as most guys around 6'5", 6'4", 6'5". So I'm the only guy in here that can scratch his ankle without bending over. So. But what it did is I was short enough to be able to get under a guy, gave me the leverage to get under him and lift him for run block, but also gave me the arm length during pass protection to keep him away so he couldn't grab me. So learning my body and how to use it to my advantage is the key to playing. And so, again, you've got to understand those type of strengths and weaknesses too, and go from that way. I hope that answered your question.
Was there, we're talking about the game, and you obviously took a lot from the X's and those side of things, the game itself. Was there a value or a characteristic that the game taught you, like we talked about at the beginning, that you took away and then applied to your everyday life values, like something like commitment or integrity, respect, any of those values that the game taught you that kind of stood out above the others?
I think, again, I'm going to repeat, myself probably. I think the work ethic, you may beat me early on, but I'm going to keep on working, and eventually I'm going to have it. And it's kind of like Jim Ringo, who was my offensive line coach for many years with the Patriots, who was absolutely the best offensive line coach that ever lived. He said, football's an easy game when you boil it down to its simplest roots. I hit you, you hit me. We both hurt. One of us is going to quit. It ain't going to be me. And I think that's something I've taken with me all my life. I may get beat, but I ain't going to quit. And I have a real fear of quitting. And I think of all the lessons, that's the number one lesson.
All right, we'll open it to our students here in Huntsville again for a question. We got a specific one we want to pick up.
There's a lady back there in the back.
Back there in the back? All right, we'll go ahead and get you the
There's
next
one too.
Which one?
Either one.
We're going to do this one in the middle first. All right, so go ahead and state your name. And ask your question here for Mr. Hannah.
Okay, so who motivated you? Like, who's like your biggest fan?
Who was your
when you were
biggest
growing
fan?
up?
Your biggest fan. Who motivated you the most?
Oh, my fan? I never paid attention to fans. I hate to say that, but I really didn't, because I never even knew other than just seeing them when I came out before at the game, that's about the only time I noticed them. I was busy. I had a job to do, and I couldn't worry about fans. And besides, most of them are so fickle. I didn't play for fans. I played, I tried to play for my God, and I tried to play for just, my family, myself, that I wouldn't embarrass anybody, especially me. And that was my biggest fear. I had a coach of mine once, Don Shinnick, who played with the Colts back in their heyday. Shinnick we were at a golf tournament, we were sitting there drinking a Coke before the game, and he says, John, what motivates you more, the thrill of victory or the fear of defeat? And I looked at him and I said, well, I'm probably going to give you the wrong answer, but I'm more worried about getting beat than I am than having fun and winning. I said, how do most people answer that, Shinnick? He says, just like you. He's most of the great ones answer just like you. And I think that you've got to have that fear of getting beat inside of you all the time.
So I got a list here. So the Pro Football Hall of Fame in 1991. The first Patriots player, like we said in the intro, to ever be inducted. College Football Hall of Fame in 1991. And your number 99. Your number 73 is retired with the New England Patriots, and you're in the New England Patriots Hall of Fame. So you could say that you probably had a pretty decent career. What do those honors deep down mean for you?
I love them, don't get me wrong. I appreciate them, and it's really great, and I'm very humbled by them. But more than that, what really gives me the thrill of my career is when I see old players that I might have played against who respect me, who think I was good, or like I said, even on the interview when you were done, one of the greatest, Jim Ringo, who played back in the 60s with Green Bay and Philadelphia. the last year I played, I looked at rank Jim and I said, Jim, could I play it on the 60s? Because that was my hero team. I mean, Green Bay Packers, man, when I was a kid, that was the team. And I said, could I play with the Packers? He said, absolutely. And that, when he said that, that was my Hall of Fame. I just knowing that I could have played with my heroes probably means more to me than anyone can imagine. And that's what part of all that you talk about signifies, is that I could have played with anybody at any time. So I guess that's where it comes from.
All right, we're going to go to one more question from our students here in the live crowd in Huntsville. Once we get this, who we are?
The plaid shirt. Plaid shirt.
All right. All right, go ahead and state your name and ask Mr. Haney a question.
I'm Lucy Lawrence, and what characteristics do you think an athlete should have to be successful at their sport?
What characteristics do you think an athlete should have to be successful?
Well, that's a tough question, you know that. I think the two most important things is humility. I'm not saying that you aren't confident. You understand the difference between being confident and being cocky. I think you need to be humble. Why do you have to be humble? Because when you're humble, you always are working to get better. You're never good enough. Have you ever played a perfect game? Has anybody here played a perfect game? No, you hadn't. Don't lie. So that's number one, be humble, because you're always working to get better. Number two, be diligent in learning technique. Learn your body, what it can do, what it can't do, and develop your own, around the basics, develop your own style. Sport is artistry. There's certain basics that apply, don't get me wrong, but you have a different body than your teammate. So you have to take your basics and build that around your own unique self. Does that make sense? And then I think if you do those two things, if you stay humble, continually work, give it all you got, that's the third thing. I had a coach, Ray Perkins played with the Colts back in the early 60s, and he probably the leading receiver. Nobody, I mean, he was an unbelievable receiver. And he only ran like a 5.4. But he could get open on anybody because he ran such precise patterns and film studied and knew everything about his opponent before he went in the game. But he was our head coach my last year, and he challenged me when he came in one time, and he said, when you play tomorrow's game, he said, I want you to come in on Monday and grade yourself, but I want you to grade whether you defeated the guy in front of you or whether he defeated you. All I want you to do is grade yourself from the time the ball is snapped until the time the whistle is blown. Were you giving it everything that you had? Well, I did. I thought, well, okay, I'm pretty good at that. When I got through grading myself, I only graded about 74%. And let me tell you, after that game, I was wore out. And because what would happen is, you know, as an offensive lineman, you know, you pass check, and all of a sudden the ball would be thrown downfield, And instead of really busting my buns to get down there and throw a block, it'd be that 7/8 speed. You know what I mean? I mean, you're still running, but it ain't full out. So I'd have to give myself a minus. And anyway, I asked Coach Berry what was the highest he ever graded after I told him my grade. He said 78. And so my goal, and I think if every athlete here has that goal, you'll achieve a whole lot more than you thought. If you just give it 100% every single moment that you're on that field, and I think it even goes beyond that. It's at practice and at preseason, how you eat, how you take care of yourself in the off season, how you train in the off season. All those things take a role and play a part in who you are and who you become as an athlete. I know it's a long-winded answer, but I really believe those things.
Well, I was going to ask you for your final comments that you wanted to leave everybody here with today, but I think that'll wrap it up pretty nicely. So with that, we're going to wrap up this installment of our Hall of Famer series with Gold Jacket, class of 1991 inductee, Mr. John Hanna. Mr. Hanna, thank you for being a part of the program today.